Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson, and this is Diesel Performance Podcast. Guys, Chris Emke once again won another award at the movies. So I believe this time it was Best Actor for acting like a tough guy. So we're really proud of him. Props go out to him for that. Today, sitting in his seat, I have the one and only Nick Pregnitz. Nick, how the hell are you?
I'm not Chris Emke, but I am glad to be here.
Well, that's how we know, for sure. Nick, we've had you on the show, I don't know, 3 dozen times or so. I think our listeners are pretty familiar with you. But just in case, why don't you give somebody new to the show a quick rundown of your background in diesel performance?
Yes, I am the owner and founder of Calibrated Power Solutions, home of Duramax Tuner. I founded the business in 2007. I've been tuning diesel trucks since then, building turbochargers, running a business of 35-odd people, and just generally being in the industry and into cool shit since then.
Absolutely, yeah. Well said. I think I came on 12 years ago, and it was a super small operation. There's like 6 or 8 of us or something. And God, over the time, it went from being a tuning shop to also having a mechanic shop to also getting into turbochargers. And then transmissions, and now it's all sorts of things. We did want to hone in today a little bit about one of the things that have been pretty popular for us lately.
Yeah, what's that?
Talking about the L5D. Guys, you know Chris and I went on a ride-along last week. I think that was last week, right, Producer Justin?
Yeah.
Yes. We went on a ride-along last week in that giant L5D, that 6500. It rode like a brick on wheels, but it was a lot of fun experiencing the difference of the tuning in that truck, especially since it had an STR turbo to really kind of maximize all of the fuel gains in it. So it was a real eye-opener. I mean, that's not a small truck by any stretch of the imagination. It's also not a light truck. But, man, once we turned the tune up, it reminded me of when we did the 2.8-liter ride-along, of like it just being a total night and day difference. Now, Chris and I, in last week's episode, we talked a little bit about some of the basic differences between the L5D and the L5P, really from our side of the world. A slightly smaller turbocharger, and it's detuned. It's about the stretch of what it is from like performance application of where we're seeing the differences, right?
Okay.
That's what we would talk about at a sled pull.
Yeah.
Your side of the world, a little bit different. You get to get a little bit more involved with these L5Ds and kind of see some things that are maybe not out there for the naked eye to observe.
Yeah. So you're asking me what's different on my side for the L5D?
Yeah. What piques your curiosity when the L5D first came around?
Yeah, good question. So the platform, usually when I attack a new platform, I look at what's available, what's available from the powertrain. So, what do I have in the way of fueling? What do I have in the way of fuel pump? What do I have in the way of air from the turbocharger? What do I have in the way of cooling? That's a big one that most people overlook. Nobody calls in here and asks how much cooling overhead and thermal control overhead do I have.
Nobody's ever used those words on our phones.
Right, exactly. And or how much transmission holding capacity, or how much, just kind of what's extra, right? And, from the calibrated power side, our sales team's approach to the customer is that consultative sales approach. So we're talking to the customer, seeing what does the customer do with their truck. And so my goal is a guy who designs parts, and who kind of coaches the sales staff on how to handle the customer in these different situations, is to understand what do I have to work with, and then what is the intended use of the vehicle, the average intended use of the vehicle.
Sure.
So what do you see? I guess I'll put it on you, right? What you think of an L5P 3/4 ton versus an L5D?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring that up, right? So the L5Ds, I almost always see them come on with like a chassis set up for towing really heavy, right? That's very clearly what their primary purpose is, and that's whether it's the Chevy GMC or the international version of these trucks. It's either a giant service body for like ComEd.
Yeah,
would not surprise me at all to see that. Or it's like Whirlies where they're pulling the toter home behind it, and it's set up to to do nothing but run a fifth wheel.
Yep. So we've seen a lot of that. Seen a few with pickup truck bodies on them, right?
Yeah, this is the second one now.
Pretty popular.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've been telling this in your head, but a lot of the trucks that come through our shop, they don't really have stock wheels and tires on them anymore. And so there's an ego component, right? Like, I want this thing to look big and I want it to have presence.
Sure.
And that's not lost on me. Like, I understand that. And so I got to kind of balance all those things, right? Like, if you have a 8,000, 9,000 pound truck and you tow, once every 2 or 3 months, and you tow a car or 10,000 pounds behind your 3/4 ton, you're fairly average guy, right? Like, that's a pretty average use.
It's a commuter and you tow with it once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, now we go to an L5D, which rolls in here at 11,000 and 12,000 pounds, unburdened by a trailer. And then it's set up to tow a big-ass trailer. I mean, like 25,000 pounds is probably going to be behind any one of these trucks that we've seen. That's probably a minimum. And not only 25,000 pounds, but 25,000 pounds on top of the 12,000 pounds that they came in with. And then they have 6 speeds instead of 10 speeds, and they have tires and wheels that aren't really great at keeping them in the rev range, right? Like, they like to shift early. I don't know if you noticed that driving it.
Yep.
Likes to shift really early, and we don't have control over the trans tuning on those trucks at this point. So I really have to make sure that I manage the power delivery, the extra power that I want to give this truck. It has to come in the factory operating window of the truck, because if I have it come in at higher RPM, not doing the customer any favors.
Yeah, you're not likely to be up in the 4,000 RPM range in one of these trucks.
No, most of them shift at 2,700 to 2,950.
Jesus.
And even at light throttle, they shift very early. So you want to be, you want the truck needs to build power 1,600 to 2,400 like really well. And if it comes to life even sooner than that, better.
Now, does that create challenges with controlling heating? I mean, that's generally like bringing power on at low RPMs is usually a great way to see high torque output along with high heat buildup.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good way to build heat. It's a good way to build all sorts of things that are not great for the long-term durability of the chassis. Right?
Yeah, it's a diesel. We get it, guys. We're all about the torque, but bringing on tons of power at 1,200 RPM, that's not the torque you're looking for.
That's expensive torque.
Yeah,
that's going to get you in a real pinch. That thermal management. You got to have engine speed to drive the fan. These fans are not electric fans, right? Maybe electric fan clutch, but you got to have engine speed to drive the fan. So we got to have the thing able to turn RPM, but we also have to have it be able to make power in its operating range. And so I'd say the challenge there is really in turbocharger design. You can work the tune, and you should, you being me, I should work the tune to have a similar flavor as stock, not power-wise, but power delivery-wise on the pedal. I shouldn't front-load the pedal, shouldn't make it a super sensitive pedal, right? Because if I do that, I make the truck shift really early, and then I get it into this kind of trouble spot where it has to lug a lot. So we want to really avoid that. And then in turbocharger design, we really want to keep that turbocharger efficient and happy and operating at low RPM. So really want to avoid the temptation to go oversized. But I mean, it's oversized overkill.
Right. Yeah. So a Mach 2, which is like our 67, we've seen them on these trucks. I think Worley started with a 67 on his, if I remember correctly.
I don't think I've put a 67 on like an 06, 05, earlier Kodiaks, and we put a 64 on one of the earlier L5Ds. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not saying like you can't do it, but
Sure.
I just don't think it's a great marriage.
You definitely have to be somebody who knows your truck and knows your gauges and lives and dies by them. Like,
Yeah.
it's certainly not to throw it on and let the employees take it for a spin.
Right. You make a great point, because some of these guys, these are business assets, right?
Yeah.
So like, they're letting somebody else tow with it, and like, we got to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Chris and I were talking about that a little bit. I'm like, man, this one's a nice one. So was the last one we drove. They got the truck beds on them and everything. And they're fun, but they're very rare to find them for personal use.
Yeah.
Even Worley, who I think was one of the first ones that we saw like a big bang for the buck return, right? Yeah, it's still a company truck. I mean, his brothers drive it, his employees drive it. You know, they
Right.
pile in and out of it.
Right.
Like, if you think rental cars get used, worked hard, like, go ahead, have a diesel truck at work.
Yeah, have the sales guy tow the presentation trailer down to UCC.
Yeah.
Right, I hope Dustin's listening or whoever. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't work right. Like, yeah, we don't want that.
Well,
you know?
they have pretty major problems right out the factory. So, like, one of the common things we hear on social media and we get phone calls about is guys calling saying, like, dude, I had a trailer hooked up. I started going up a hill. It just starts losing speed.
Yeah.
Like, I have the cruise control set and it can't maintain the speed of 55, 60 miles an hour going up an Illinois hill. Like, we're not in the middle of a mountain range here. Like, we're in Flatlander, USA.
Yeah.
And it still struggles to get up a hill.
There are people listening to this podcast who wouldn't even categorize anything in our state as a hill. They'd
Yes.
maybe call it a grade, a small grade. Yeah, that was a complaint that I've heard from customers. That's certainly something that I want to be mindful of in tuning. Like, that's, one of the big things these guys tell me is the truck does okay, like 0 to 40, 0 to 30. Like, it'll get moving, but any sort of highway travel is really just unpleasant. And so that's what I want to really tap into is, like, I want to have this thing have some power, have some torque, have it be able to pull hard, like, from a roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the STR built out of the L5D Charger is a real nice setup and tuning to match. I mean, we go from high 200s horsepower to mid 5s, which is big, right? And, like, I'm not saying you're going to tow 25,000 pounds with mid 5s, but you're going to be able to have easy in the mid 4s for towing power.
Sure.
And that extra 100 horsepower, 140 horsepower towing is a big difference.
Yeah. It's especially, to me, it always jumps out at me that, like, when you're towing, you're absolutely right. You're not going to use 500 horsepower. You're not going to have it in the big tune. Like,
Right.
most of these trucks, yes, it comes with 5 tunes. Yes, there is, a performance tune or a fun sport tune at the top. 99% of you L5D owners are never going to use that tune. But even down in the heavy tow tune, which is something Chris and I tested just driving unloaded, man, it's a night and day difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're talking fuel rate stock 85 MM3, right? And that's just your, 85 equals 300 is basically how I think about it in my head. Okay, so we go up to 100 MM3. I mean, that's more than 15% more power. That's 20-something% more power. That, on any vehicle, 20% more power makes a huge difference. When
Yeah.
you said 2.8, I was like, absolutely, that's what it feels like. You take that 2.8, which is a turd, and all of a sudden it's drivable, even in the tow tune. Like, it's got some snort, man.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the 2.8 was one that, like, I think in the video I literally looked down at my foot and I'm like, it felt like there was a tennis ball under the gas pedal, and now it doesn't. I'd say, these vehicles are 10 years apart almost, right? So, like, now when I got in this one, it's just effortless. That was one thing that I really, really liked about the truck with the tune on it, with the turbo there, is you don't feel like it's a big S400 LMM that's just lag for days and then blows coal down the back of your truck.
You don't feel like you have to babysit it.
No, exactly. I was not worried about gauges. Now, granted, we're not out drag racing the thing, but
Right.
like, still, we tested it going up and down, significant grades here in Illinois. And, man, it went from something where, like, oh, here's the problem, to you forget that you're driving because it's so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about that gauge element too, because these trucks especially, you want safety, you want reliability, and to be able to tell a guy in a 12,000-pound truck, like, here's your gauges, they exist, you can look at them, and this is what you should expect, but you don't have to babysit the gauges. And so we leave all the thermal controls active. We manage basically the power level is there, and then as the power level pushes against the thermal limits of the intercooling system, of the exhaust system, the truck will slowly pull fuel back, similar to like our LML smart EGT control, right?
Okay.
It's not gonna alert you. It's not gonna like or like automatically go into limp mode, but it is going to slightly pull fuel back, just like you would slightly ease off the pedal in the case that EGT started to crest.
Love that. I love when we can build in extra safeties. We know the factory has a lot of safety and precautions already built into the calibration, the sensoring equipment, things like that, to make sure that they, can honor their warranty to the best of their ability. We always get the question when we tune it, well, why didn't the factory just give it out with this power? To me, that's an easy one. The factory has to cover a warranty across the entire country and every altitude and every temperature of every day with every employee who has a driver's license that was unwittingly put behind the wheel of this thing, hooked to major weight. There's a lot of reasons for GM to hedge their bets and really detune the shit out of these.
Yeah, they're setting the truck up for worst driver, worst case scenario, heaviest GVWR. And if you're not doing all those things, I think most responsible operators out there can handle the extra power.
Yeah.
And we certainly have a lot of safeties in there. And even if you do leave it in the race tune and you put your worst guy in, and he goes to tow with the thing, probably the worst case scenario is you're going to be pretty hard on the trans. The safeties are going to save the engine. They're going to pull power back. They're going to detune the truck once they see it start to get hot. But there's really not a lot we can do to protect the trans in that case.
Sure.
So that's probably the biggest challenge.
But that's also, put me in the truck stock, I can hurt the trans. Yeah. That's something that I try to remind guys is listen, if you're really being full on stupid, it's not hard to break things.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of step into this with a little bit of thought between your ears.
Most guys who own these trucks own them, right? And who own them and use them, they know that.
Yeah.
You've been there.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
They're
right?
not a cheap investment, man.
When I started in this industry, a new truck would run you $35,000-$45,000. You could probably jump into a new diesel pretty easily. Might not be fully loaded, maxed out for that. You might have had to kick up $55,000 or $60,000. Now, $55,000 or $60,000 will get you a 10-year-old truck.
Yep. Yeah, you're looking at $80,000, $90,000 truck for one of these heavier.
Yeah. Plus, because now you got to get wheels for it, right?
Yeah, you got to get all the
goodies. You're not driving
it
without wheels. Don't be a cheap ass.
Exactly.
You got to tint the windows. That's another one all these have. I love it. And you got to get black ice, and that shit costs money.
Oh, man.
All right. So the L5D, what do you have any comparisons about this and any of the other cabin chassis models out there, like a Power Stroke cabin chassis? We used to have that 450 back in the day, which was honestly the biggest pickup truck we've ever owned as a company.
Yes.
Best turning radius any vehicle I've ever been in ever.
Yeah.
I love driving that thing, but it did not feel like a cabin chassis, like a 4500 or 5500 Chevy. I can't remember the last time I drove a Cummins cabin chassis, although I know I have, but I don't ever remember anything significant jumping out about driving them. What about you? Any comparisons to any of the other cabin chassis models out there?
I think the Ford 450 and 550 feel like big pickup trucks, and I think the same with the Ram, the workhorse chassis or whatever they call it. It feels like a big pickup truck. The difference between a GMC 4500 medium duty and an F450 is considerable. Is really a lot of chassis. The thing just feels big, man. Like a 450 is a big truck, but a 4500 Chevy is a big truck. Has a lot of presence on the road. The steering and the braking system feels really strong on a Ford 4500, 5500, 6500 Chevy. I would say that's probably the biggest difference that I notice is those brakes you will lock that. You can stop that truck if you need to.
Oh my God. I will tell you, I was scared to stomp the brakes because that truck does not feel like it wants to stop. It's like you said, it's like 12,000 pounds rolling empty.
It's 12,000 pounds empty.
It is not fun 55 miles an hour and being like, oh shit, we need to stop. You don't want to be in that truck and have that thought. But it does. I will say they were capable, right? Yep. We were going down hills and up hills and things.
Yep.
So they were perfectly capable, and I do remember being back in the Ford stuff. That undersized, I think, is probably the way I would describe the braking system. Is it just yeah, sure, it'll work.
It feels
right,
appropriate for the job. It just it's not like holy shit. It's it feels like you're in a semi truck. You know, like it's just next level in the 5500 Chevy, and the ride quality and just I don't know. You can tell, like a Ford F450 is nice.
It is.
550, you can get some nice interior packages, man. You can really dress the truck up nicely. And then in the big Chevys, I mean, they're definitely much better than the old Kodiaks were.
You're starting to say some sacrilegious things.
Much better than the old Kodiaks, but they're not F450 level.
Yeah,
so, I don't know. I would just, I don't think if you're I don't think they're in the same buyer's consideration. You know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna be like, oh, I think we're getting a trailer, and I might get a Kodiak, or I might get a 5500 Chevy, or I might get an F450. Like, I don't hear that.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, you're right. They're two different worlds, two different purposes, I would say.
It is a monster on the road, man. That really intimidate. I mean, I would say the intimidation factor of if I had a landscape company, or if I was doing earthwork, I would absolutely drive that big ass 5500 like that.
Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of driving the Humvee, not the Hummer.
Okay, yep.
The actual Humvee, of how obnoxious and oversized it was for the road. How many blind spots? That's my big complaint on the 5500. I constantly found myself I don't want to pull my body weight on a steering wheel, right? Use the steering wheel to pull myself up. But I am floating my head up into the dash to look around the corners to try to see past those pillars. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that thing's jacked up to the moon. You know, it's on whatever it was, 40-inch tires, and you know, ride quality. The ride quality was absolute dog shit. Now that truck is made for a trailer to be on it and be loaded down, which I know helps the suspension. But we're on one of the worst roads in Illinois here where the shop is, and it is an eighth of a mile to get up to actual real pavement.
Yep.
It could have been 10 feet and it still would have hurt. It is brutal.
Yeah, that's life. That's life.
That's the way they come, right?
That's the way it goes.
I get it. What's next? Do you think we're going to do anything more with these? Are we going to get into the transmission tuning on them?
I hope somebody gives us transmission control. I really think that would make a big difference. I would love to see the 10-speed come out in these. I think that's that would really set this platform apart, especially these guys with big tires. That shift RPM drop, shift extension, is a big drop. You know what I mean? These trucks really, if anything needed the 10-speed, these things need the 10-speed.
It's so funny to hear you say that. So I've been on the YouTube comments lately, and we did a great 10-speed video that you were on a year ago, give or take. The first, I don't know, we'll call it 200 comments, all phenomenal. Now it's every single guy who has ever had a mechanical issue with a 10-speed. So we're getting lots of complaints about the reliability of 10-speeds. Now, we have a shop here. We tune a lot of these trucks. We work with a lot of these trucks. I don't see a lot of 10-speed work being done here because we don't have a lot of guys with 10 speeds that break them.
No.
But it does seem to be something on YouTube that there is definitely some sort of thought experiment going on about how much less reliable the 10-speed must be.
I have read those comments, Paul, and I had the exact same sentiment. Are there just a lot of 10 speeds failing around us that we don't see? Because I don't see them. I don't know.
I will say, as I've been drilling into them more and more, there's so many comments that include my 6-speed wasn't as reliable as my 4-speed. Therefore, your 10-speed is no good.
Oh.
Not a real Allison. Ford made this, which isn't true. It's. I think at this point there's been a lot of rumor mill floating around about the 10-speed.
Sure.
And a lot of that's starting to come out in the comments where it's not people's user experience. When it was CP4s, right, on LMLs, you guarantee if you knew 5 people with an LML, 2 of them had a failed CP4. At least in their experience. It was happening. It's still happening.
Yes, we're still fixing CP4 issues.
Yes. Totally understandable. Okay, that's a real known mechanical issue. The 10 speeds, I'm not seeing the real world side of the problem.
No, we're gearing up to work on them. I was kind of hoping I'd have some trouble with my truck, just really beating the snot out of it. Like, maybe we'll find out where it lets go. And
me
I know
the keys.
guys are failing them at higher power levels, deleted trucks, etc.
Sure.
But I think like the majority of responsible users, I don't think they're having issues with them. That's just one guy's opinion, though.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, so we're going to look at, we would love to get access to transmission tuning. Would love to see a 10-speed in these. Can you talk a little bit about the turbo design that went into the STR for the L5D?
I would love to, yes. I would love to do like a whole episode. Nobody would listen to it, but I could talk for a whole episode about anti-surge and recirculation in the compressor wheel, and basically surge protection in the compressor. And I think it's just totally misunderstood in our community, especially, or just it doesn't exist. People don't know about it. But so the L5D turbocharger is smaller than the L5P. You know that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And that's worth like maybe 80 to 100 horsepower peak. Now, there's another big difference in the L5D turbocharger, and that is that it has a much bigger anti-surge. And anti-surge, for those listening, that would be like the silencer ring in the Cummins, okay? That's
Delete it, get more whistle?
It's not actually I'm going to just... deep breath, Nick. That part is there for a purpose. Do not delete it. It's there to redirect air from the map width enhancement groove back to the compressor wheel to slow the compressor wheel down. So the L5D and the L5P both have this technology. It's extremely common on all late model diesels. The newest Cummins has a great design, which you should not remove from your turbocharger. But anyway, the L5D probably has the most high capacity anti-surge setup in any factory diesel that I've seen.
Most capacity anti-surge.
Yeah, so basically you're taking air from right where the compressor inlet is. The blades are straight, and then they have a radius, and that air comes through the compressor and is discharged into the compressor housing. And there's a cut there called the map width enhancement groove, where air can basically come back out into the anti-surge of the cover and be redirected into the front of the turbocharger. And so the area or the throat of this anti-surge area has to do with how much airflow you can recirculate right there. And that air gets recirculated so that the compressor wheel speed can stay up, so that you can maintain turbocharger efficiency and basically maintain an anti-surge situation. Now, the turbo is not terribly efficient right there in its operation, but it means that you can operate the turbo at high boost and low RPM. And so the better your anti-surge protection is, the higher boost you can make at low RPM without getting which kills bearings. Okay?
Right.
So if you hear that noise, that's a bad noise. You want to avoid that. That's going to kill your bearings. And so we want to, the factory did a great job in designing this. So we take that L5D compressor wheel and we build our STR out of that compressor cover because it has such a great anti-surge. And so that's kind of the fun of working with the L5D also is like, if you can get this thing to move all the air it needs to make 500 horsepower, and you can still keep it protected anti-surge wise, and you can still keep that big boost at low RPM, that big torque number up. That's a challenge for me, right? Like that's part of what keeps my job interesting.
Sure.
Did I just put everybody to sleep?
No. I think it's good. I think anti-surge is one of those things that it's becoming more and more a part of the conversation. For years, it never has been. Right? Like we've never cared about anti-surge built into a turbo. Surge was a fueling or tuning issue. We all know that.
Yeah. You have had the luxury of being able to sell parts that were designed by someone who knew, and you didn't have to know yourself.
But now we are starting to see it straight from the OEM. We're starting to become more and more of something that's integrated. We're starting to talk about it more in the aftermarket space. I know you and Worley going through the L5P intake horns was probably my most in-depth dive into the anti-surge kind of conversation. Just because it really looks like you guys are just adding fucking metal to intake horns at some point. I know you're not, but if you look at it and you know nothing, that is what it looks like.
Well, I think most people don't know what's actually happening in the anti-surge design. They don't know, the mechanism by which the compressor cover is mitigating surge, or that it's even there.
Yeah.
They think it's there for silencing. So, I want more whistles, so I'm going to get rid of this anti-surge. And, I watched a video on YouTube that made me really just frustrated the other day about that. Remove your silencer. First of all, it's not a silencer ring. It's a goddamn anti-surge. Don't take it out.
No, you're talking about an old 5.9?
No, I'm talking about a late model 6.7. It was a 2019 6.7 Charger. It was worth 5 or 6 horsepower. And for what? To be able to not lug the truck at full boost? The anti-surge protection is there for high altitude, especially. They're for high load, low RPM. If you're removing it for 5 horsepower, you're in the wrong.
Yeah, well, especially with diesel, where it's so easy to make power.
Right, turn the tune up 5 horsepower.
Yeah,
Jesus
that's
Christ.
why I say it's like hacking your turbo apart. Probably not your best bet.
Probably not the best move.
Also, no big deal. They're $3,000 turbos from the factory, so go ahead and hack that ring out of it.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, I guess there's still some learning out there that needs to happen.
There is. Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we keep cranking out YouTube videos that are educational based over at Duramax Tuner. If you guys haven't, if you're listening to this show, I guarantee you're going to like the Duramax Tuner YouTube channel. Jump on over there, give it a follow, give it a like, give it a subscribe. You'll get to see Nick's pretty face on there talking about all sorts of stuff in a very excited manner. I make an appearance once in a while. We even drag Chris Emke onto the show when we can. Nick, L5D owners, is there one message, if you could boil it down to a sentence, what's something you want to tell every L5D owner?
You do not have to be the ugly duckling in traffic. I mean, you don't have to be ho-hum, wah, hating your life driving your truck in traffic. There is more power available. You're not doing a bunch of damage to the powertrain using it. We can add it very responsibly, very reliably. This is something that is, no big deal for us. Would love to, get you that little extra. We do not have to turn this thing into a hot rod, just enough to make it enjoyable to drive.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, thank you for joining us as well. I'm Paul Wilson, and this is Diesel Performance Podcast. Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.